Welcome to Zoe Stories. Doctor said, change your gender or lose everything. I remember the exact weight of the hangers the first time I slid a dress across my shoulders, cheap satin that smelled faintly of lavender and the perfume of someone else's life. It was in the back of my wardrobe at my mother's house, wrapped in a plastic bag like a hidden relic. I was 17, shaking with equal parts fear and something I didn't yet have a name for, and when I put it on in the dim light of her bedroom, I felt ridiculous, guilty, and at the same time, fiercely alive. That night, I learned how soft fabric could feel like permission. Years later, nothing about that feeling has faded. I'm 28 now, and my apartment has a corner that's mine and only mine, a small dressing table with a cracked mirror, a drawer full of things I hide from the world, lip glosses, a careful selection of wigs, a pair of heels I still limp in the first 3 times I wear them, and notes I write to myself when the city feels too loud. By day, I write code for a health tech startup. It's a job full of deadlines, caffeine, and a constant pressure to perform. By night, I become someone else. Some people call it crossdressing, some call it play. Words matter less than the truth. When I dress, I feel whole in a way that the fluorescent office can never teach me. I practiced in bathrooms, in bodegas, in the privacy of my car after a late shift. I learned how to paint on a face the same way I learned a new programming language: trial, error, and incremental mastery. Makeup became an algorithm of its own, and I loved the way a brush could alter not just the shape of my cheekbones, but the shape of my confidence. Mia knows me. Not all of me. The parts one lock away in my drawer at 2 a.m., but she knows pieces. We met at a rooftop party 2 winters ago, when the city smelled like rain, and the DJ played a song that made us both move the wrong way and laugh about it. She is quick to smile, the kind of woman who enters a room and rearranges the light. Patient and sharp, she's a nurse at a private clinic and comes home smelling faintly of antiseptic and jasmine. She noticed the way I listened to other people, the little soft pauses where I would hold something back. She asked questions the rest of my friends never did. In her presence, I felt like I was less of a puzzle. But loving someone who sees you is different from inviting them into every room of your mind. I told Mia things slowly. Small truths wrapped in jokes at first, then in quieter hours when we lay on the couch and the city hummed outside our window. I told her about the dress at my mother's house. I told her about the apartment corner, about how my hands trembled the first time I applied mascara. Her reaction was kind. She listened like she was translating my heart. She didn't laugh. She didn't ask me to stop. Instead, she touched my face once and said, softly, "I like who you are when you're honest." Even so, parts of me remain secret because the world is sometimes a dangerous place. At work, I hold meetings and speak with a voice I train to be neutral. I am professional, which is code for invisible in certain ways. My parents, bless them, have a map of expectations for me that includes marriage, a respectable job, and no inconveniences. They would not understand that for me, a skirt and a well-blended highlight is not a joke but a lifeline. I learned early that some silences protect you. This is why the idea of being discovered is a slow, cold panic that lives at the base of my neck. It's not just fear of judgment. It's fear of losing the scaffolding I built to survive. Job security, family respect, the tiny routine that keeps my life from collapsing. Everything feels precarious if one thing is outed. That's why dressing is always a carefully rehearsed theft. I take time when Mia is at work, when my parents believe I'm at a weekend training, when the neighbor's routine guarantees that nobody will knock on my door and pull open that private chapter. But secrecy is a pressure cooker. It makes me both creative and brittle. I learned to fold my 2 lives so they fit inside the same apartment like consonant and dissonant chords. I am tender in ways I hide. I laugh at the same stupid shows Mia does, and buy her coffee when she's had a hard shift. I cook badly and call it adventurous. I can debug a server issue at 3 a.m. and also spend an hour choosing the right shade of blush because those tiny things matter. Mia thinks I am complicated, but she loves me. The gentle, steady kind of love that shows up with soup when I'm sick and with an extra blanket on the couch when I fall asleep reading. The tension between what I keep and what I share sits between us like a silent third person. Mia is both my champion and the keeper of a small suspicion she has never voiced. She catches the odd-tinged behavior sometimes, the way I stare longer at a magazine cover than most men dare, the way I sometimes buy a lipstick and then forget to hide the receipt. Once she found a strand of wig hair, and instead of confronting me, she smiled and said, "Nice color." That smile contained a question that we both chose not to ask out loud. And then there is the other thing I carry, a medical shadow. 6 months ago, I started having headaches that would not quit, a fog that turned meetings into mazes and left me staring blankly at lines of code until the screen blurred. Tests followed and appointments and the sterile language of lab reports. I did not tell anybody much because words like tumor feel like a sudden, invasive geometry, angles you cannot measure without trembling. Mia came with me to the doctor when she could. She held my hand, and at night we whispered about the absurdities of mortality, the things you plan and the things that push you into corners you didn't choose. The doctor we saw last week is efficient and not cruel. She has eyes like someone who has watched 1,000 fragile things pass in her clinic. She explained things with a voice that was constant and unimpressed by theatrics. There are treatment options, she said, but the metabolic response to the medication is unpredictable. In your case, there are side effects that could compromise your current role in the biotech trial you're heading. She used words like eligibility and risk and protocol, and they landed like stones. The part one remember most clearly is how she paused and then said something that felt like it should have been a twist in a bad movie, an ultimatum framed clinically with no melodrama. She said, "We can proceed, but there's a very real possibility that the treatment will alter your physiology in a way that changes gender markers. For some patients, these changes are permanent. For others, it's reversible. You need to decide if you're willing to continue under those terms. If you don't, you may not qualify for the trial, and we would pursue alternative care paths that may not preserve everything you have now." It's strange how a sentence like that rearranges a life. The words have a gravity that pulls at fragile things tucked into drawers. I left the clinic feeling like someone had rearranged the furniture in my chest. The scare that had been hovering was now a tangible option: change or lose everything. But what did change mean exactly? And what, in me, would be lost if I chose the other path? Those hours after the appointment were both ordinary and seismic. Mia made tea and pretended everything was normal because she knows my face better than anyone and could see the tremor that didn't belong to caffeine. She asked, "Want to tell me?" And I told her the basics carefully, like diffusing a bomb. She listened, and her hands, nurse's hands, moved in a kind way over mine. She said, "We'll figure this out." But there was a look in her eyes I couldn't read. Was it worry? Relief? Something more complicated? I went home that night and opened the drawer where I kept my dresses. I touched a hem the way you touch a memory, gentle, reverent, furtive. For the first time in years, the private corner of my life felt like something that could either save me or endanger everything I loved. The choice the doctor had described did not feel like a clinical decision anymore. It felt personal, intimate, like a path that might lead to a place I had always visited in secret or to a place I would never be able to leave. So here I am, in the soft light of my kitchen, holding a dress I've worn a dozen times and counting the cost of being myself. Mia is sleeping in the next room and doesn't know how loud the future is. I think of my mother and her expectations and of the bridge between who I hide from the world and who I might become if I have to choose. My heart is a pendulum swinging between fear and an odd, small relief that maybe the secret I've cherished could, in another form, become the thing that saves me. Or it could take everything. The doctor's words echo, "Change your gender or lose everything," and the sentence sits like a dare in the dark. The night after the doctor's appointment felt endless. The city outside my window pulsed with the sound of rain, and every droplet against the glass felt like a ticking clock counting down to a decision I wasn't ready to make. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the paper the doctor had given me, informed consent for experimental treatment, and the words blurred together into something monstrous. Change your gender or lose everything. The The sentence echoed like thunder in my mind. Mia came in quietly, her hair still damp from a shower, wearing one of my shirts. She had that look again, the one that said she wanted to fix things, even the ones that couldn't be fixed. She poured me a cup of tea, her movements careful, deliberate. "You've been sitting here for hours," she said softly. "I can't stop thinking about it," I admitted, my voice hollow. She wasn't exaggerating, Bella. "It's real. If I don't take this treatment, the tumor might spread. If I do, I might not be me anymore." Mia set the cup in front of me and sat down. The faint glow from the streetlights reflected in her eyes. "What does not you even mean?" she asked. "You'd still be you inside, wouldn't you?" Her question hit harder than I expected. Would I? I looked at her hands resting on the table, fingers slightly trembling. "If my body changes," I whispered, "if my voice changes, if I wake up and look in the mirror and see someone else staring back, how can I say that's still me?" She didn't answer right away. The silence stretched between us until finally, she reached across the table and touched my hand. "You'll still have your heart. That's what I fell in love with." Her words should have comforted me. Instead, they terrified me. Because there was another truth I couldn't say aloud. A part of me wasn't as afraid as it should have been. That same quiet voice that used to whisper when I cross-dressed, telling me this felt right, was whispering again now. What if this was fate's cruel way of exposing who I really was? I spent the next few days avoiding the decision. I buried myself in work, hiding behind code, and meaningless tasks. My office was a maze of cold screens and stale air, but at least it was predictable. My colleagues were oblivious, just faces behind monitors, none of them knowing that beneath my calm surface, my life was splitting open. Every now and then, I'd catch myself glancing at my reflection in the darkened monitor. My features were sharp, masculine, but my eyes betrayed something else. Something softer. Something waiting. That Friday, Mia texted me. "Dinner at 8. Don't run away this time." When I arrived at her place, candles were lit. Music was playing. For a second, I thought she was trying to distract me from the weight of everything, but when I saw the small envelope on the table, I knew she had something else in mind. "What's this?" I asked. "An idea," she said, leaning against the counter. "You told me you're scared of losing yourself, right? So let's test it. Let's see who you really are, without fear, without pretending." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" She smiled faintly and opened the envelope. Inside was a small tube of lipstick and a silver chain with a tiny charm shaped like a heart. "You once told me dressing up made you feel freer. So tonight, you're not hiding. Not from me." My throat tightened. "Bella, this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," she interrupted, her voice trembling just a little. "You need to see that who you are doesn't depend on a doctor's report or a label. It's already in you. If the treatment changes your body, fine. But if you can accept yourself tonight, then maybe, just maybe, it won't be so scary." I stood frozen, the air between us electric. My instinct was to refuse, to laugh it off and run. But her gaze held me in place. There was no judgment in her eyes. Only love and maybe curiosity. Slowly, I took the lipstick from the envelope. It was a deep crimson shade, bold, almost defiant. My hands shook as I uncapped it. Mia stepped closer, her voice gentle. "Here. Let me help." She guided my hand, tracing the color onto my lips with steady precision. Her touch was warm, deliberate, grounding. When she finished, she whispered, "Look at yourself." I turned toward the mirror above her mantel. The reflection staring back wasn't a stranger, but it wasn't the man I knew either. The red lips transformed everything. My face softened, my expression shifted, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't see sickness or fear. I saw potential. Mia watched me closely. "Still you." I nodded slowly. "Still me." She smiled sadly. "Then whatever happens next, remember this moment. You're allowed to survive, even if survival means changing." That night, when I lay beside her, sleep refused to come. I kept thinking about the lipstick, the way it felt like armor instead of disguise. And deep inside, A question I'd buried for years was clawing its way to the surface. What if this isn't a loss? What if it's becoming? The next morning, I found Mia in the kitchen making coffee. She glanced at me and said, "You've already decided, haven't you?" I hesitated, then nodded. "I have to. If I don't take the treatment, I'll lose everything.
My job.
My health. Maybe my life." She exhaled slowly. "And if you do?" I met her eyes. "Then I'll lose everything else." Her expression softened, but there was something unreadable in her gaze, a quiet fear that maybe she was about to lose me too. As I left for work, the lipstick tube sat in my jacket pocket, its weight impossibly heavy. It was more than makeup now. It was a reminder of the line I was about to cross. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which side of that line I truly wanted to live on. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and fate. I sat in the waiting area clutching the clipboard of forms, my fingers tapping against the edge as if rhythm could anchor me to the moment. Around me, people murmured in low voices, nurses called names, machines beeped faintly behind glass doors. It was a weekday morning like any other, but I could feel my world splitting quietly along the seams. The nurse who finally called me in had kind eyes. She led me through a corridor that seemed longer than physics should allow and stopped in front of a door marked Clinical Trial Suite 3. Inside, a doctor in a pale coat, different from the one who had first delivered the news, smiled with professional calm. He explained the procedure, the injections, the follow-up visits. His voice was a steady hum that I half heard while the rest of me watched the window. Gray sky, wind in the branches, everything outside still alive and ordinary. When the needle went in, it burned cold and then spread warmth up my arm. I kept my face still. Mia squeezed my hand, whispering something that was lost to the sound of the machine's soft whir. 20 minutes later it was done. They said I might feel lightheaded, that hormonal rebalancing sometimes began within hours, that fatigue would come first. At home, Mia fussed over me with soup and soft blankets. I tried to laugh, to make it normal. But by evening my skin tingled like static under the surface. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, searching for proof that I was still me. My features were the same, but there was a flush to my cheeks, a softness around my eyes I couldn't place. Maybe it was just exhaustion, but it unsettled me. Days passed. The headaches eased, replaced by strange waves of emotion that came without warning. I would be fine one moment, then suddenly near tears at a song on the radio. Mia tried to tease me about it, but her laughter was gentler than before, almost cautious. I knew she was watching me, measuring every small change. Work became both refuge and torture. I could lose myself in code, but concentration slipped more easily than before. One afternoon, my colleague Mark leaned over my screen to ask a question and frowned. "You look different, man. You sleeping okay?" "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Just tired." His eyes lingered for a moment, confused, before he nodded and moved on. That single glance set my nerves on fire. I could feel a thin thread of fear tightening in my chest. How long before someone noticed something I couldn't hide? At home, I began to dress differently without thinking. Softer fabrics, lighter colors. I told myself it was comfort, nothing else. But one night, as Mia sat reading on the couch, I opened the drawer with my hidden clothes. The dress I chose was one of the first I'd ever bought, a simple blue wrap that made me feel safe. My hands didn't tremble when I put it on this time. The mirror caught my reflection, and for a heartbeat, I couldn't tell if I was terrified or relieved. When Mia looked up and saw me, she didn't gasp. She just set her book aside. "Come here," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered with 1,000 thoughts. I stood there awkwardly, waiting for judgment, for laughter, for anything. Instead, she reached out and adjusted the collar of the dress. "You remembered how to tie it right," she murmured. Something in me cracked open. "You're not angry?" She smiled sadly. Why would I be angry at honesty? I sat beside her, and for a long time we said nothing. The sound of rain against the windows filled the silence. She eventually took my hand and said, "You know, when the doctor told us what might happen, part of me thought, Maybe it won't change anything between us. But I'm starting to think it might change everything. Not because I'll love you less, but because you might love yourself differently.
I didn't know what to say.
The truth was, I could already feel it happening, the small shifts in how I stood, how I spoke. It wasn't that I was becoming someone else. It was that the person I'd buried under years of fear was finally breathing. Weeks went by. My voice softened slightly, just enough that people at work tilted their heads when I spoke. The lines of my face seemed gentler, and sometimes when I brushed a hand across my cheek, the texture felt new. The doctor called it physiological adaptation. I called it transformation in slow motion. But there were costs. Mia's smiles became rare. She was supportive, yes, but also haunted. I'd catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking, her expression unreadable. One night, after we brushed our teeth in silence, she whispered, "Do you still see me the same way?" I met her eyes in the mirror. "You mean, do I still love you?" She nodded. "I do," I said. And I meant it. But even as I said the words, I felt something unfamiliar stirring inside me. Not distance, not indifference, but a widening horizon I didn't know how to explain. The next morning I woke early. Mia was still asleep, her arm draped across the blanket. I went to the window and saw the city waking up in streaks of orange light. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid of the day ahead. I felt curious.
Alive.
Later, as I got dressed for work, I noticed the lipstick tube Mia had given me sitting on the counter. I hesitated, then uncapped it and drew a faint line of color across my lips. It wasn't bold this time, just a whisper of red, but it felt like an oath. That evening, when I returned home, Mia greeted me with a tired smile. "You seem different," she said softly. "I think I am," I admitted. She nodded. "Then let's see where this goes." Her voice was brave, but her eyes were full of quiet worry. We both knew there was no map for where we were headed. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Inside, I stood at the threshold of my own reflection, wondering how much of me would remain by the time the storm was over. The days that followed were nothing short of torment. The words of the doctor echoed inside my skull like a curse. Change your gender or lose everything. I thought maybe he was exaggerating, that maybe there'd be another way out, but deep down I knew he meant it. The diagnosis wasn't fake. My body was shutting down, collapsing under stress and hormonal imbalance. At first, I tried to ignore it. I went back to my routine, sitting in my small clinic office, prescribing pills to strangers while hiding my own prescription in the drawer. But the mirror didn't let me lie. My reflection looked foreign. My jawline had softened. My shoulders felt weaker. Even my voice had started to tremble, a higher pitch slipping through when I got emotional. One night, while Mia slept soundly beside me, I snuck into the bathroom and stared at myself under the pale yellow light. My hands shook as I picked up her makeup bag, the same one I had joked about so many times. I whispered to the mirror, "Is this what he meant? Change or lose everything." I opened the bag and ran my fingers through her brushes, the faint scent of her perfume swirling around me. It was intoxicating. Without realizing it, I traced the liner along my eyes, awkward at first, then smoother, as if my hands remembered something my mind refused to admit. My reflection blinked back, a stranger with trembling lips and frightened eyes. But the longer I looked, the more right it felt. The transformation started small. A bit of concealer to hide the dark circles. A touch of mascara. Then, a shade of lipstick I had seen Mia wear 100 times. When I finally slipped into her silk robe, half as a joke, half as an experiment, it clung to me like a second skin. The texture was alien yet soothing, like a whisper against every inch of exposed fear. For a few minutes, I forgot everything: the hospital, the diagnosis, the shame. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was escaping. But that illusion shattered when I heard footsteps behind me. "Daniel?" Mia's voice was half asleep, confused. My heart stopped. I couldn't move. I looked like a ghost caught mid-transformation. Mascara smudged, lipstick uneven, her robe tied around my chest. The door creaked open, and she stood there, her eyes wide. "What are you doing?" she asked softly. I panicked. It's nothing. Just trying to understand what the doctor said." I thought maybe... I couldn't even finish the sentence. Her expression shifted from shock to something unreadable. She stepped closer, inspecting me like a puzzle piece that didn't fit where she'd left it. "Trying to understand," she whispered. "By dressing like this?" "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I just wanted to see what it would feel like." A silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then she sighed and said, "You look different. Not weird. Not wrong. Just different." That one word cracked something inside me. I wanted to cry, to laugh, to fall into her arms and tell her everything. But before I could speak, she turned away. "I'm going back to bed," she said flatly. "We'll talk in the morning." And she left. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Breakfast, small talk, checking her phone, everything normal. But her eyes wouldn't meet mine. I tried to act casual too, but I felt the tension twisting between us like barbed wire. Later that day, I got another call from the doctor. "Daniel," he said, "we need to start hormone therapy soon. The results are in, you're not stabilizing. If you delay, your body might start rejecting its own hormones. You'll lose functionality, mobility, maybe even cognition." I froze. "You mean I'll die?" "Not necessarily," he said coldly. "But you won't be yourself anymore. You'll lose control." Lose control. The phrase haunted me. Because wasn't that exactly what was happening? That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the prescription bottle the doctor had sent, tiny white pills that would begin the transformation he warned about. One choice would save my life but destroy my identity. The other would keep my identity intact, but maybe end my life. I didn't sleep. Instead, I found myself walking to Mia's closet. The same robe hung there, freshly washed. A few dresses shimmered in the dim light. My hand trembled as I touched the soft fabric. When I put one on, something inside me clicked. A quiet, painful, yet strangely liberating acceptance. The way the dress hugged my body, the soft sway of the fabric, it made me feel whole. I whispered to my reflection, maybe this is who I'm supposed to be. Then, a knock on the door jolted me. It was Mia again, awake, serious, holding her phone. "Daniel," she said in a cold voice, "why is there a pharmacy delivery under your name for hormone therapy?" My blood ran cold. The bottle was right there on the counter. She saw it before I could hide it. "What's going on?" she demanded. "Tell me the truth." I looked at her, trembling, mascara half worn from last night, lipstick faintly smeared on my lips. And for the first time, I didn't lie. "The doctor said if I don't change, I'll lose everything," I whispered. "Maybe even you." Her expression broke. Pain, disbelief, confusion. And in that split second, I realized something terrifying. She might not be ready to love who I was becoming. But could I stop it now? Mia didn't speak for what felt like an eternity. She just stood there in the doorway, eyes locked on the pill bottle, her breathing uneven. The silence between us grew so thick it felt like it was pressing against my chest, stealing my air. Finally, she whispered, "So, the doctor really said that? You'll die if you don't change?" I nodded slowly, afraid that any word from me would make her run. "He said my body's shutting down, that something in my hormone system is collapsing. The only way to stabilize it is through gender transition." She shook her head in disbelief. "That doesn't make sense. You're not sick. You're just stressed. You can't just change everything because of that." Her voice cracked halfway through, and I saw tears glimmer in her eyes. She wasn't angry. She was terrified. And that hurt even more. I stepped closer, holding out my hands. "Mia, I didn't ask for this. I don't want this either. But I don't want to die. I'm trying to survive." She flinched when I reached for her, like my touch was unfamiliar. "Survive," she said bitterly. "At what cost, Daniel? Do you even know who you'll be after this?" Her words sliced through me because they echoed my own thoughts, the question that had been haunting me every night. Who would I be if I did this? Would I still be me, or just a stranger in my own skin? When she left the room that night, I didn't stop her. I couldn't. I stayed up until dawn, sitting on the floor in front of the mirror, the pill bottle clutched in my hand. My reflection stared back, a man who looked more like a ghost every day. Pale skin, trembling hands, eyes swollen from sleepless nights. I was losing myself anyway. That morning, I made a decision. I took the first pill. It was a small, simple act, but it felt like detonating a bomb inside my life. The next few days passed in a blur of nausea, dizziness, and emotional whiplash. Every morning, I'd look at myself and feel something shift, something subtle yet undeniable. My body was changing. My mind was too. The strangest part was how some things felt right. My voice, softer. My posture, gentler. My thoughts, no longer clawing to escape, but quietly realigning. The reflection in the mirror didn't feel like an intruder anymore. It felt like someone I'd always known but never met. But the world around me wasn't ready. At work, people began to notice. I'd catch glances. Too long. Too curious. The nurse I'd worked with for years finally asked one afternoon, "Daniel, are you okay? You look different lately." "Just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. But rumors spread fast in small hospitals. By the end of the week, I could feel the whispers following me down the hall. One coworker even laughed under his breath and said, "Maybe Dr. Carter's trying a new lifestyle." It burned, but I couldn't defend myself. Not without revealing the truth. And that truth felt like a ticking bomb waiting to explode my entire career. At home, Mia barely spoke to me. She avoided my eyes, her silence sharper than any argument could be. She'd stay out late, and when she returned, she'd find me sitting by the mirror, staring at my reflection with quiet obsession. One night, I gathered the courage to ask, "Do you still love me?" She froze in the doorway. "I don't know who you are right now," she said quietly. "I'm trying to understand. But every time I look at you, I see someone I don't recognize." Her honesty shattered me. Because she was right. I didn't recognize myself either. That night, I dreamed I was standing in front of two mirrors. In one, I saw the man I'd always been, strong, tired, and hollow-eyed. In the other, I saw a softer version of myself, a woman with calm eyes and a peaceful smile. And when I tried to step back, the woman reached out, pulling me into her reflection. When I woke, I was drenched in sweat. My pulse raced. The dream shouldn't have scared me, but it did. Because a part of me didn't want to resist her anymore. The next morning, Mia came into the room holding her phone. "The doctor called," she said flatly.
"He wants to see you again."
"He says the hormones are working." Working. That word carried both relief and terror. I went to the hospital alone. The doctor greeted me with his usual calm expression, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. "You're stabilizing," he said. "Your vitals are improving. You've avoided the collapse, Daniel. You're doing well." I should have felt relieved, but his next words froze my blood. "Now we need to start preparing for stage 2, psychological alignment and appearance transition." "Appearance," I repeated. He smiled faintly. "If your body's stabilizing hormonally, your mind will need to adjust too. You'll need to start living in your new gender role soon. Dress, presentation, name, everything. Otherwise, the mental conflict could undo your physical progress." I stared at him, horrified. "You mean live as a woman?" He nodded gently. "It's not just about survival anymore, Daniel. It's about integration. You can't live halfway between two worlds forever." Those words haunted me all the way home. When Mia asked how it went, I didn't answer. I just walked to her closet again, my hands trembling as I pulled out a dress I'd seen her wear 100 times. She watched me, silent, as I slipped it on. It fit almost perfectly. And when I turned to the mirror this time, I didn't see confusion. I saw clarity. Maybe the doctor was right. Maybe this was the only way to survive. But as Mia's eyes filled with tears behind me, I realized survival might mean losing everything else I loved. I stood there in front of the mirror, the soft fabric of Mia's dress whispering against my skin like a secret I wasn't supposed to hear. The reflection staring back wasn't Daniel, the man who worked 12-hour shifts, paid bills, made weekend plans. It was someone else. Someone fragile, graceful, terrified. Mia's voice broke through the silence. Is this what he told you to do? I nodded slowly. He said I need to start integrating. To live like this. Her eyes flickered between my reflection and me. I could tell she was fighting something inside herself. Anger, sadness, disbelief. Finally, she said, you don't even look like yourself anymore. I turned toward her.
I know.
But if this is what keeps me alive. Alive, she snapped, cutting me off. You call this living? The room fell quiet again. The tension was suffocating, pressing down on both of us. I wanted to tell her that I still loved her. That inside, I was still Daniel, but the words wouldn't come out. Because part of me wasn't sure if that was true anymore. The doctor's words echoed in my mind. You can't live halfway between two worlds forever. That night, Mia didn't sleep in our bed. She moved to the couch, and the distance between us felt like a canyon. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing the faint hum of the city outside. My body was changing, my voice softer, my skin smoother. But it was my heart that hurt the most. The next morning, I went to the hospital again for another consultation. The doctor was reviewing my latest test results. Your vitals are stable, he said, looking satisfied. You've adapted faster than expected. I tried to smile, but it felt hollow. So, what happens now? He handed me a file. Now, we start your psychological sessions. You'll meet with Dr. Reed. She specializes in gender identity alignment. You'll begin learning to express your new self. Socially, emotionally, even physically. Physically? I asked, my throat dry. He smiled. Hair, mannerisms, voice modulation, body posture. Everything matters, Daniel, or should I say, Danielle? The name hit me like an electric shock. I froze. Don't call me that, I whispered. He chuckled softly. You'll get used to it. But I didn't. Not yet. When I got home, Mia wasn't there. Instead, there was a note on the table. It was short, written in her careful handwriting. I love you, but I don't know how to love this version of you. I need time. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. My hands shook as I held the note, the reality sinking in like a knife twisting deeper with every heartbeat. For the first time in weeks, I screamed. Loud, raw, broken. Everything inside me came pouring out. Fear, loss, anger. I ripped the note, then fell to my knees, clutching pieces of it against my chest. But after the storm of emotion passed, a strange calm followed. I walked to the mirror again. The reflection still frightened me, but it also comforted me. The face looking back wasn't Daniel anymore, but she wasn't a stranger either. That evening, I made a choice. If I had to live as someone new, I would at least understand her. I opened Mia's vanity drawer, pulling out a small box of makeup. My hands trembled as I picked up a foundation brush, remembering how many times I'd watched Mia do this. My fingers moved clumsily at first, then more naturally, like muscle memory from another life. The powder brushed over my skin, soft and light. I added a touch of lipstick, then mascara. And when I looked up, the person in the mirror wasn't Daniel pretending anymore. It was me, complete, terrified, but real. The sound of the doorbell made me jump. My heart leapt into my throat. I rushed to the door, wiping at my face, unsure if I should hide. When I opened it, it was Dr. Reed, the new psychologist. I hope I'm not intruding, she said gently. Your doctor told me to check in early. I stepped aside, embarrassed by my appearance. But her gaze softened when she saw me. You've already started, she said quietly. I nodded. I had to. She studied me for a moment before speaking. Do you know what scares you most about this change? I didn't answer right away. Then, finally, I whispered, that I'll forget who I used to be. Dr. Reed smiled sadly. You won't forget. You'll carry him with you. He's not gone, he's evolving. Something in her tone, so calm, so sure, made me believe her. Even for a moment. We talked for hours that night. About identity, fear, love, and survival. She told me stories of others who had faced impossible choices. People who had lost everything, but found themselves. When she left, I stood by the mirror again. My makeup had smudged, my hair was messy, but my eyes, they looked alive for the first time in months. But that fragile peace didn't last. The next day, my hospital supervisor called me in. "Daniel," he said firmly, "we've received complaints about your new appearance. Some of the staff feel uncomfortable. Until we review your case, we'll have to suspend you temporarily." It was like the ground had been pulled out from under me. My career, my last bit of stability, gone. As I left the hospital, my reflection in the glass doors followed me. Half Daniel, half Danielle, both trapped between two worlds. When I reached home, I sat in the dark, the city lights flickering through the blinds. My phone buzzed. It was Mia. Her message was simple. "We need to talk. I've made a decision." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Was she coming back, or leaving for good? And then, just as I reached to reply, there was a knock on the door. I froze. It wasn't Mia's knock. It was sharp, heavy, unfamiliar. Someone else knew. Someone else had found out. The knocking wouldn't stop. 3 sharp, heavy thuds that rattled the air and made my stomach twist. I stood frozen, half in light, half in shadow, mascara smudged, lipstick faded, my breath shallow. Whoever was on the other side of that door, they knew. Another knock. Louder. I swallowed hard, glancing around the apartment. My pulse was racing so fast it felt like the sound itself. I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked scared, fragile, but undeniably real. The thought terrified me more than the knocking. Finally, I stepped toward the door and opened it a crack. "Daniel Carter?" A man in a gray suit stood there, holding an envelope. His voice was professional, cold. "You've been served." He pushed the envelope through the gap and walked away before I could say a word. I closed the door, hands trembling as I tore the seal open. It was from the Medical Licensing Board. "Due to recent reports regarding your behavior, public image, and failure to comply with professional standards, your medical license is under review. You are suspended effective immediately pending investigation." My entire body went numb. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. My hospital ID still sat on the coffee table, and now it meant nothing. I dropped the papers and sank to the floor. First Mia, now this. Everything I'd built, my reputation, my career, my identity, it was all slipping through my fingers. For a long time, I just sat there in silence, feeling the weight of it all crush me from inside out. Then I heard it, the sound of keys in the lock. The door opened slowly, and Mia stepped inside. Her eyes were red, her hair tied back like she hadn't slept either. She froze when she saw me sitting there, papers scattered around, wearing her old cardigan and makeup that looked more like war paint now. "Daniel," she whispered, stepping closer. I looked up, barely holding it together. "They took everything, Mia. My license.
My job.
Everything." She knelt down beside me, her hand shaking. Oh my God. I expected her to pull away, but instead, she reached out and held me, really held me for the first time in weeks. I buried my face in her shoulder and sobbed like a child. When the tears stopped, we just sat there on the floor, surrounded by silence. Then she spoke, her voice trembling. "I talked to Dr. Reed," she said softly. I blinked, confused.
What?
"Why?" "She told me everything. About your condition. About the treatment. About how this wasn't your choice." Her eyes filled again. "I didn't understand before. I thought you were running from me, but you were fighting for your life."
I didn't know what to say.
The words just wouldn't come. She reached up and touched my cheek. "You don't have to hide from me anymore." For a moment, it felt like something inside me finally broke, not in pain, but in release. I leaned into her touch, closing my eyes. But the peace didn't last long. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. I picked it up hesitantly. A distorted voice came through the line. "Dr. Carter, or should I say Danielle, you're trending online." My blood ran cold. "What?" I whispered. "Check your messages," the voice said, and the line went dead. I opened my phone, and there it was, my worst nightmare. A photo of me, dressed as Danielle, sitting in front of my mirror. It had been taken from outside my window. My hands shook violently as I scrolled. There were hundreds of comments already, my colleagues, old classmates, even patients tagging me. Some mocking, some shocked, others disgusted. "Oh my God," Mia breathed, looking over my shoulder.
Who did this?
I couldn't answer. My mind was spinning too fast. Someone had been watching me. Someone knew everything. Another message came through. "If you want the rest of the pictures to stay private, meet me tomorrow. 10 a.m. St. Andrew's Park. Come alone." Mia read the message, then looked at me in horror. "You can't go. It's a trap." I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tighten. "If I don't go, they'll destroy what's left of me." She grabbed my hands. "Then I'm coming with you." I shook my head.
No.
They said alone. "Daniel." "I have to fix this," I interrupted, my voice breaking. "Everything's already falling apart. If I don't face this now, there'll be nothing left to save." She stared at me, torn between fear and love. Finally, she nodded, tears glistening. "Then promise me you'll come back." I forced a small, trembling smile. "I'll try." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at my reflection. For the first time, I didn't see Daniel or Danielle. I saw someone caught between two realities, one dying, the other waiting to be born. As dawn broke, I changed into simple clothes, tied back my hair, and stared at the reflection one last time before whispering, "Let's find out who's doing this." I grabbed my bag and walked out into the cold morning light. But deep down, I knew, no matter what happened at that park, nothing would ever be the same again. The morning air was cold enough to sting, a thin mist hanging over the quiet streets as I made my way to St. Andrew's Park. Every sound felt amplified, the crunch of gravel under my shoes, the distant echo of traffic, the pounding in my chest. I pulled my hood low, clutching the strap of my bag tight, my heart racing with every step. The park was almost empty when I arrived. Just a few joggers and a man walking his dog. The trees stood bare and skeletal, the fog weaving between them like ghosts. I glanced at my watch. 9:57 a.m. 3 minutes. Every second dragged. My mind was a storm. Flashes of Mia's tearful face, the doctor's calm voice, the reflection in the mirror that didn't feel like me anymore. I tried to steady my breathing, but the fear sat in my throat like a stone. At exactly 10 o'clock, a figure stepped out from behind one of the oak trees. A man, tall, lean, wearing a dark coat and sunglasses even in the fog. He walked toward me slowly, confidently. "Dr. Carter," he said, stopping just a few feet away. His tone was casual, almost mocking. "You look different." I clenched my fists. "Who are you?" He smirked. "Someone who knows what it's like to lose everything. But, unlike you, I know how to make a comeback." My pulse quickened. "What do you want from me?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, tapping the screen before holding it up. There were photos, dozens of them. Me, dressed as Danielle. Some taken through my window, some at the hospital, one even in front of my building. "Who gave you those?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "You did," he said simply. "When you left your windows open. When you walked into public pretending to be someone else. The world's watching now, doctor." He took a step closer. "I can make all of this go away. Or I can make it worse. Depends on what you're willing to do." I stared at him, barely able to breathe. "You're blackmailing me." He shrugged. "Let's not use ugly words. Think of it as an opportunity. You've lost your job, your reputation's in pieces, but your story could make headlines. A doctor forced to change gender to survive? That's viral gold." I felt sick. "You want to exploit me?" He smiled. "I want to help you. You'll play your part, a brave woman reborn from tragedy. You'll appear on my network. I'll handle your public image, make you a star. And in return, I delete everything. Everyone wins." The world tilted around me. This wasn't just blackmail, it was a trap, a calculated performance where I was the star puppet. "I won't do it," I said, forcing strength into my trembling voice. His expression hardened. Then the world sees everything tonight. And trust me, they'll tear you apart. He turned to leave, but I called out, "Wait." He paused, glancing back. "I'll think about it," I said quietly, trying to sound broken, desperate. He smirked. "Good. You've got 24 hours. Don't be late." He walked away, his figure vanishing into the fog. The moment he was gone, I fell to my knees. My breath came in sharp bursts. The world around me blurred, spinning out of control. I didn't even notice the woman watching from across the park until she stepped closer. "Danielle?" I turned, startled. It was Dr. Reed. She looked at me, eyes wide with concern. "I thought I'd find you here. You didn't answer my messages." I tried to steady myself, wiping at my face. He's blackmailing me. He has everything." She nodded slowly. "I know. I saw the posts before they were deleted. Someone's already pulling them down. It's being handled." I frowned. "Handled? By who?" She hesitated, then said softly, "The hospital's internal board. It wasn't just about your case, Daniel. Someone's been targeting doctors involved in gender research. You're not the first." The words hit me like a shock. "So, this was never about me?" "Not just you," she said. "But you became the perfect story, the emotional center. Someone wanted to make an example out of you." I staggered to my feet. "Then I have to stop them." She shook her head. "No, not yet. You're in danger. They'll expect you to show up again. Let the authorities handle this." I looked at her, disbelief written across my face. "You want me to just sit and wait while my life burns down?" "Sometimes survival is the fight," she said quietly. I didn't want to hear that. I turned and walked away, my thoughts spinning too fast to make sense. When I got home, Mia was waiting for me. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling. "Where were you?" "I saw the posts. Everyone's talking about you." "I know," I said, sinking into a chair. "It's worse than we thought. Someone's using me for something bigger." She knelt beside me, taking my hands. "Then we fight back together. You're not alone." Her voice cracked at the end, and I saw the truth in her eyes. She still loved me, even if she didn't understand who I was anymore. I nodded weakly. "Tomorrow morning. If I don't show up, they'll release everything. I'll go, but I'll go prepared." She squeezed my hands tighter. "Then we do this, right? You're not losing yourself anymore, Daniel. You're taking yourself back." That night, we stayed awake, planning, talking, crying. It was the first time in weeks I felt like I wasn't drowning. But deep down, I knew the real storm was still coming. And this time, there would be no running from it. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that man's smirk, those photos, the fog closing in around me like a noose. By sunrise, my nerves were shot. But beneath the fear, something new was forming, a kind of quiet, simmering resolve. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. Mia had already set up her laptop at the kitchen table, screens filled with lines of code and encrypted messages. "He's using an offshore proxy," she said, her tone sharp and focused. "But he slipped up. One of his data drops went through a local server in town. I can trace it." I blinked, surprised. "Since when do you hack?" She smirked faintly. "You think I was going to marry a doctor without learning how to dig up dirt? I'm not helpless, Daniel." Hearing her call me Daniel again felt strange. Familiar, yet distant. But it reminded me that despite everything, despite the body, the voice, the chaos, a part of me was still me. She typed rapidly, and after a tense few minutes, a name appeared on the screen. Evan Blake. I froze. Evan Blake. I know that name. Who is he? I swallowed hard. A journalist. He covered my early research trials years ago. Tried to expose me for conducting experimental identity alteration. He lost his job when the story fell apart. Mia's eyes widened. "So, this is revenge." "Not just revenge," I said, my voice low. "He wants to build his career again, and he's using me as his headline." We both stared at the screen, the pieces falling into place. He said to meet at 10 again. I murmured. "At the park." Mia shook her head. You're not going alone. I nodded. I wasn't planning to. The fog was lighter that morning, the sun struggling to cut through. I wore a plain black coat, my hair tucked into a cap. Underneath, a small hidden mic connected to Mia's laptop streamed everything to her in real time. I reached the park exactly at 9:59. Evan was already there, standing by the fountain, looking almost casual with a coffee cup in hand. Right on time, he said, his tone smug. You must be desperate. I forced a brittle smile. Let's just get this over with. He motioned toward a bench. Sit. I did. My fingers trembled slightly, but I kept my face calm. You made the right choice, he said. Once we go public, you'll be a phenomenon. The brave doctor reborn as a woman. The media will eat it up. I told you, I'm not your story. He leaned in close, whispering, Oh, but you are. And by the time you realize that, it'll be too late. My mic picked up every word. Mia was listening. Evan pulled out his phone and began showing me draft articles, promotional mock-ups, even a tagline. From surgeon to siren, the true story of Dr. Danielle Carter. I felt bile rise in my throat. Evan, I said quietly, you're ruining people's lives. He laughed. I'm creating truth. People need symbols. You'll be one, whether you like it or not. I took a deep breath. Then I guess it's time someone showed them what you really are. Before he could react, I pulled a small device from my pocket, Mia's mini camera, already streaming live to her social accounts. Evan's eyes went wide. What the hell are you doing? Broadcasting, I said simply. Every word you just said is live. Thousands are hearing it. He lunged for the device, but I stood up fast, backing away. You wanted fame, Evan? Congratulations. You're getting it. His composure cracked. You don't know what you've done. Oh, I do, I said. I took back control. For a few moments, chaos erupted. He tried to grab me again, shouting, but people in the park were turning, recording, whispering. Someone called the police. By the time the sirens echoed in the distance, Evan's face had drained of color. He tried to run, but 2 officers intercepted him. They grabbed his phone, his bag, and within minutes it was over. I stood frozen, breathing hard, watching him get handcuffed. The lead officer approached me. You're safe now, ma'am.
Ma'am.
The word hit differently this time. Not like a disguise. Not like an insult. But like acknowledgement. I didn't know if I deserved it yet, but for the first time, I didn't flinch. Hours later, back home, Mia handed me her phone. News notifications were flooding in. Blackmail journalist arrested. Dr. Danielle Carter clears her name. I scrolled numbly, the surreal headlines spinning before my eyes. Daniel, Mia said softly, touching my arm. You did it. I looked at her, at the warmth, the pride, the quiet sadness in her expression. I don't even know who I am anymore, I whispered. Danielle, both feel broken. She smiled faintly. Maybe you're both. Maybe that's okay. Her words lingered, strange and comforting. That night, as I looked at my reflection again, the face staring back was still unfamiliar, but it no longer looked like a stranger. For the first time, I saw something else there. Strength. Maybe even peace. I turned off the light and whispered to my reflection, You're real now. Days turned into weeks after Evan's arrest. My name was everywhere, on news sites, podcasts, trending hashtags. Dr. Danielle Carter. I kept hearing it, reading it, repeating it in my mind like an echo that refused to fade. Every time I said it aloud, it felt less like a disguise and more like a truth I was learning to live with. But peace never lasts long. Not for people like me. The hospital board called an emergency meeting. Mia tried to reassure me as I dressed that morning. A navy blouse, subtle earrings, hair tied neatly back, but I could see the worry in her eyes. They'll understand, she said, though her voice trembled slightly. I nodded, trying to believe her. I've saved lives there for years. They'll see that, not this. At the boardroom, the air was heavy with silence. 12 faces stared at me. Old colleagues, mentors, people who once trusted me with scalpel and soul alike. The chairman cleared his throat. Dr. Carter, he said carefully. We commend your bravery in exposing the journalist's crimes. However, given recent revelations and the public attention surrounding your situation, he hesitated on the word situation. I felt my stomach twist. With all due respect, I'm still a doctor. My qualifications haven't changed. Another member adjusted her glasses. But your identity has, and our patients, donors, and board members are unsettled. The hospital's reputation. Reputation? I snapped. You're talking about reputation when a man blackmailed me and nearly destroyed my life? I stood up for the truth. The chairman's expression didn't change, which is precisely why we think a leave of absence would be appropriate. Silence. Cold, suffocating silence. I stared at them one by one, realizing that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I fought, to them, I'd never be the same person again. Finally, I whispered, I see. And I walked out. Outside, Mia was waiting by the car. She saw my face and didn't even ask. They suspended you, didn't they? I nodded. Indefinitely. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed. We can fight this. File an appeal. Maybe I don't want to, I said quietly. Maybe this is the universe's way of forcing me to stop pretending. She looked at me, puzzled. Pretending. I took her hand, tears threatening to spill. When the doctor said I had to transition or die, I thought it was punishment. But maybe it was a beginning. Maybe this isn't about what I lost. Maybe it's about who I've become. Mia squeezed my hand tightly. Then who are you, Danielle? Her voice cracked on the name, but there was no judgment, no resistance. Just a trembling kind of hope. I looked at her, then at the city beyond. The glass buildings catching sunlight, reflections of lives moving on. Someone's still figuring it out, I said softly. But for once, I'm not running. She smiled faintly through tears. Then maybe I won't either. We stood there for a long moment, the weight of everything pressing down, and yet lifting somehow. That night I got a call. Unknown number. Hello. A voice, distorted, calm, answered. You think it's over, doctor? My breath hitched. Who is this? The line crackled. You exposed Evan. Good. But he wasn't working alone. I froze. The voice continued, lower, almost taunting. You were part of something bigger. You think this was just blackmail?
No.
This was the first step. You were meant to be our proof. And now you've gone rogue. The call ended. My hand trembled so violently the phone nearly slipped. I looked at Mia, who had stepped into the room, concern written across her face. What's wrong? I turned to her slowly. It's not over, I whispered. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? I replayed the voice in my head, calm, deliberate, confident. Whoever it was, they knew everything.
About me.
About the experiment. About the choice I was forced to make. And suddenly I realized, Evan wasn't the mastermind. He was just the messenger. Somewhere, someone was still watching. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye again. The same woman I'd been trying to understand, standing there in soft light, half in shadow. I thought I'd lost everything, I murmured. But maybe I was never supposed to stop losing. Mia placed a hand on my shoulder. Danielle, what are you saying? I turned toward her, my voice steady now. I'm saying this isn't the end. Whoever's behind this, they wanted me to change. Now they'll see what that really means. The final shot lingered, a close-up of my reflection, eyes blazing with quiet fury, lipstick faintly smeared, a new strength behind the softness. And as the camera faded out, my voice echoed. You can take my body. You can take my past. But you'll never control what I become next.